I'm Stephen J Garvey, founder, leader of National Citizens Alliance, PM candidate for National Citizens Alliance 2019 federal general election. I'm very pleased to share tonight that as of January 31st, 2019, National Citizens Alliance, NCA, has become officially registered. This occurred today when Adam Sir, our candidate for York Simcoe by-election, was officially confirmed as a candidate. And we would like to thank Adam and his NCA team for their great effort to get registered in that by-election and run in it. Great work on your part. I'm going to be flying this Saturday to Burnaby to support our Burnaby South candidate, Zachary Johnson. So I'll be there for 4 or 5 days helping him with his campaign. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But this is great news for all NCA supporters and members. This has been a very long process for the NCA, unfortunately. It is what it is. Trudeau made it very clear in 2015 that the globalist establishment opposes nationalist-type parties like NCA. So we were faced with all kinds of obstacles, roadblocks. There was even confirmations with the wrong party name sent out to our members, causing confusion. There was packages sent out without envelopes, etc., etc. But we prevailed in the end. And that's great news for all the NCA supporters and members. And wow, it's great. So we are official. They can no longer dismiss us as some unofficial group. We are official, and I view ourselves as official, true grassroots, uncontrolled opposition. We are running not only against Trudeau and the Liberals, we're running against all those crony entrenched globalists in Ottawa. Every single one of them. And we are not playing the left-right liberal conservative control game. We don't play that game. Our mantra is very simple. Canadian unity must be our greatest strength. And that unity will never come from the false division of left, right, liberal, conservative. So we rise above that. We want to unite all Canadians for our greatest prosperity and security as a country. And that's the only way we're going to achieve it. So we're running, as I said, against all the globalists. We want to drain and replace them. So we encourage the Canadian people to get on board. We are dependent on your support, your donations, your volunteers, and stepping forth as candidates, volunteers, even organizers in our ridings. So please step up, join us if you believe in us, if you trust us, if you support our platform, which I will go through tonight. But this is very, very, very good news for Canada, for the Canadian people, that we actually have uncontrolled official opposition now. Uncontrolled official opposition. Because what we have in the House of Commons is an absolute joke. That official opposition is just miserable, pathetic. They've done nothing. And they've just sat there and let all this destruction go on in our country. So enough is enough. We got to drain all those globalists out. And I'm going to make it very clear to you. I'm going to look at some economic realities facing our country. And I'm going to show you that these liberals and conservatives have their dirty fingerprints all over them. It doesn't matter which one is in there. We want to drain all these career politicians out. All these crony career politicians who spin and spin, do their photo ops, deceive the Canadian people. And life is getting tougher for the Canadian people. So we got to wake up. Everyone needs to wake up. This is an exciting moment in Canada's history. Let's just keep going forward. And I'm going to get into some economic realities before I outline our 7-point platform. The first one I want people to be aware of is inflation. And since 1967, I mentioned this last night, a value of $100 in 1967, and if we go back all the way up to present, all the way up to 2017 here, you would need, in order to have the purchasing power of $100 from 1967, you would have to earn $725.42 in order to have the same purchasing power. That's how weak the Canadian dollar has come. This is inflation. Inflation means cost of living. And what's happening, you're getting paid, let's say you get $100. Like I said, if we fast forward to 2017, that $100, you would have to earn $752 to have the same value of $100 in 1967. So your purchasing power has reduced significantly. And that's one of the realities you need to wake up to. And we see it in this graph. It started here when Pierre Trudeau shifted the public lending right to the central banksters. The Bank of Canada previously used to print our currency at 0% interest. Then it went into these central banksters. They print the money, they charge interest, and they've been printing the money like crazy. But this is the inflation. And it doesn't matter whether it's liberal or conservative. Inflation is growing, growing, growing. All the way up. And it started right when Pierre Trudeau shifted the public lending right. And now I'm going to shift to one of the causes of this inflation. And this is the money supply chart. The Canadian money supply. And this money is being printed in secret by the central banksters. And it all started when Pierre Trudeau shifted the public lending right. And look at the money supply increase. And the more money supply printed, the more inflation. Because it's devaluing the Canadian dollar. And right now the Canadian dollars, it's like 70, less than 70 cents now compared to the American dollar. Look at that. Look at the inflation. All this money put into the Canadian system. And this is over 800% increase in the Canadian money supply since Pierre Trudeau, just going up. And that is inflation. Every time they print the currency, that is inflation. Another thing you got to keep in mind about the realities is while there's all this inflation, since 1977, the average hourly wage has remained stagnant, around $24 on average. So you get all this inflation. Your Canadian money is worth less. It purchases less, yet your wages have not gone up. That's why things are tough on most Canadians. They just don't have the purchasing power. The wages haven't got. They don't have more money. So that's why things are getting tough. Not to mention all the taxes on top of it. I'm going to shift here to another economic reality. And this is the federal debt. Again, if we look here, everything was great from Confederation all the way along. And then we hit around 1974. And that's when the debt soared in this country, regardless of liberal, conservative. And here's a boom period. And it went down a bit, but not very much, considering that was a major boom period. And now it's just gone up under Harper, and it's going up under Trudeau. So these are all the central bank. Look at the debt just piling up. And there's interest payments on that, debt service payments, over $30 billion a year to these central banksters. And what this means for you is less services for the Canadian people. And what these these globalist parties in Ottawa, what they do is they pile the debt on, and then they pile up the debt, and then they pass it on to the federal debt. They pass it on to some other government, future generations. That's what they're doing. They keep, and then you keep switching, liberal, conservative. They keep piling up the debt. The same doesn't work. That's the reality. And here's some more information you need to be aware of. This is the current debt right now. Thank you to the Taxpayer Association. It's over 666 billion federal debt. When Trudeau came in, he was at, I actually did a screenshot, it was at 612 billion. So he's added over 54 billion. He's added over 54 billion to the federal debt. Under Harper added, by the time he was done, he added around 100 billion to the federal debt. 100 billion just passed up. And it should be noted, under Harper, the bureaucracy grew to historic levels. Over 282,000 public service employees. Historic levels. So that's pretty bad in and of itself. But look at the debt. The market debt is over $1 trillion federally, and these globalist parties have completely mismanaged the country since Pierre Trudeau, and I'm showing you the data to prove it. They've sold out to these central banksters who are ripping off the Canadian people, who control the wealth of the Canadian people in their fiat currency. It's just paper with ones and zeros, and they're printing it in secrecy. And what's really troubling is the Canadian fiat currency used to be tied to gold, silver, which has real value, but now it's tied to other fiat currencies. So the whole financial system is in peril right now. Canada's financial system has been completely mismanaged. It's all about the super wealthy getting richer, and these parties hanging on to power. Here's another reality you gotta wake up to, is demographic reality, the mass immigration. These establishment parties, it doesn't matter which one in Ottawa, they all support mass immigration. Sustained mass immigration. And this started under Brian Mulroney, and it has been going on ever since. Under Harper, had historic mass immigration, and now Trudeau has upped it a bit. But if we look at the graph here, this is from Statistics Canada. What's happening is the sustained mass immigration is the rapid, radical replacement of Canada's traditional population. This is all according to UN Agenda 21 and the UN Agenda 2030, which the globalist conservatives signed Canada onto. And you can see here in the graph, in 1981, 4.7% of Canada's total population was visible minority. Every year it has increased, and there's a projection for 2036 of 34.4%. And there's another projection for 2100, 80% plus. So Canada's traditional population, comprised of Anglophone, Francophones, other Euro-Canadians, First Nations, Inuit, Métis, are going to be relegated to a minority in our country. The founding populations will be relegated to a minority. This is all planned. This is all organized by these globalist parties. Finally, we should look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is another globalist trade deal that supports the government, multinationals, and financial elitists. Without public consultation, this TPP was ratified by the current government on October 25th, 2018. All the globalist parties in Ottawa support globalist trade deals. And as I mentioned last night, they use the slogan, the phrase free trade to mask it, when in reality, there is no free trade. There's all kinds of tax, duties, handling fees. I showed that last night. The Shanghai Free Trade Zone it's not pure free trade. There's corporate tax. There's value-added tax as products leave. There's restrictions on foreign investment. Same with the Mexican Free Trade Zone. This is all about globalist trade. This is about the super wealthy getting richer, which they are, and the have-nots are getting poorer. This is the reality of it. So these are some of the economic realities and demographic realities all Canadians need to be aware of. The bottom line is these globalist parties in Ottawa have lost their way. They are selling out. They have sold out the Canadian people and the country. They are completely mismanaging this country. They are tied to special interests, globalist interests, the super wealthy. That's who they work for. Remember that. This is only going to get worse as long as these crony entrenched parties remain in power. That is a fact. So support NCA. Support NCA. I'm going to go through our basic platform. We need to get this mess taken care of. And it starts with the federal government, which is bloated and inefficient. We support cutting the federal bureaucracy by 50% within 1 year of forming government. And we will cut the bloated federal ministries and or consolidate them from 35. Can you believe that? 35 federal ministries to 10 federal ministries within the first 20 days. And in the coming months, we will be disclosing our 10 ministers. Second, most important, we support lower, less taxation for the Canadian people and businesses. Overall, we support a 7% reduction in federal taxation. We will rescind the carbon tax. We will take a close look at GST, and we will implement a simplified, tax-friendly flat tax. And we will not tax any Canadian living below the poverty line. Third, we will restore Canadian democracy, which has become top-down, autocratic through the uncontrolled opposition in Ottawa and the globalist mainstream media. We will implement recall of every MP, and we will initiate and legislate referendums, including citizen-initiated legislation, and we will implement a national binding referendum of no confidence by the Canadian people on any sitting government. And that is true democracy. So that non-confidence vote will give the Canadian people, between elections, the ability to remove a government that has lost the confidence of the people. So after 1 year of forming government, if you're not happy with the government, you will have the ability to remove that government through a referendum. Fourth, we will implement strong, no-nonsense immigration policy that puts the well-being and safety of the Canadian people first. And this includes a temporary pause to deal with the growing 11-year backlog, screening issues, chain migration issues on day one of forming government. Once the mess has been dealt with, we will support a reduction in immigration to 50,000 or less total immigration. That's 50,000 total immigration a year or less per year. That's what we support. And we will encourage, through tax incentives, larger traditional families. That's what we will do. Immigration will cease to be a planned, organized replacement. It will be a supplement to our traditional populations. That's what it will be under NCA. So we will deal with this immigration mess, and we will turn it around. Fifth, we will restore the 1934 Bank of Canada Act and thereby reinstitute the true Bank of Canada, which fully belongs to the Canadian people. And this is critical. What's going on with the Bank of Canada is at the pinnacle of the corruption. And you can see the inflation that started once they shifted the public lending rate and the harm it's doing to the Canadian people. But if you listen to any of those crony career politicians, those globalists in Ottawa, whenever they're asked about the Bank of Canada, they say, oh, we can't do anything. Inflation. They are lying to you. They are causing major inflation. The Canadian people are getting completely ripped off through the debt service payments, plus interest, compound interest to these central banksters. That is the reality. These central bankers control the wealth of every Canadian. This is wrong. We have to restore the Bank of Canada Act, and it's great the legislation is there. It's just a matter of restoring it and then paying off this debt that is owed. And we figure through our economic plan, we can save $150 billion a year federally. At least $150 billion. And a good chunk of that will be going to pay off the debt. The sixth point here, we want to end the corporate globalist misinformation control over federal politics through greater empowerment of the Canadian people through referendum and recall, and new measures to rein in conflict of interest and special interest. So we want to rein in all this corruption behind the scenes, all the money flowing out of the country, all the deals that are being made behind the scenes and contrary to the best interests of the Canadian people. So there will be a real crackdown on corruption in Ottawa under NCA leadership. Seventh, the United Nations. We will end all voluntary payments to the United Nations and its affiliates. We will implement a moratorium on UN peacekeeping missions involving Canadian troops. We will not put our troops unnecessarily in harm's way. We will reduce foreign aid outflow by 75% within the first 100 days of forming government. Further to this, we will withdraw Canada from UN Agenda 21 and UN Agenda 2030 and the UN Migration Pact, which is rooted in those agendas. They all have to go. And finally, we will hold a national referendum on complete withdrawal from the United Nations if that is the will of the Canadian people. We believe in Canadian sovereignty, Canadian citizenry, putting our people, our country first. That's what NCA stands for. We are 100% grassroots, uncontrolled opposition. We are fed up, and we are coming to drain and replace. So please share this message. Please join NCA. The country is at crossroads now. We cannot continue down this globalist path. We cannot continue down this globalist path. Also, we cannot allow these cronies in Ottawa to continue to mismanage our country. They have failed the Canadian people. They have failed the Canadian people, as the economic data shows. They have to be replaced. They have to be replaced, without question. They have lost their way. They are corrupt to the core. They need to be drained. So please join NCA, and thank you for listening.